I don't know, or I don't, can't think of a situation where someone else would do that. Someone else would sort of call you personally and, ask you ki, why are you not being accountable? And I think that was the essence of working with Piyush for me. He was always there, like your cheerleader on the sidelines, or your mentor, your friend, your coach, everything. I think all in one package, I would say.
Hi everyone, this is Piyush Ranjan. I'm the founder of Management Masters. We are a boutique admission consulting firm for the top MBA programs around the world. Today I have with us Rana Gutgutia. Rana worked with us to apply to multiple business schools around the world, and he ended up securing admits from ISB as well as National University of Singapore. So without further ado, let's talk to Rana. It's great to see you, Rana, again. Great to sort of connect with you again. Could you tell us a bit about yourself? Give us a brief understanding of where you are coming from, what your pre-MBA career looked like, and why did you exactly decide that you would want an MBA at this point of your career?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Rana. And so I've been working with PwC for the past 4 years. I joined back in 2019 and was working for insurance clients. So my background was in actuarial science, which is essentially risk management for insurance companies and banks. And then for the past 2 years, I started working on the asset side, mostly catering to, again, banking clients and clients on the asset management space. So and yes, before that, I did a short stint with this French consulting firm called Mazars, and prior to that, I was with American Express. Worked there for about a year or so, and that was more of a project management role. And like coming back to sort of when I started to think about an MBA, or what was my thought process, was essentially my role was very specialized in a lot of sense. So I started feeling like I started asking myself this question: would I want to do this 15 years down the line or 20 years down the line? I was starting to think from a long-term perspective, and I was very unsure. Like, I really did not have a firm answer to that. So that sort of led me to think, do I want to sort of diversify, or like get myself to learn other skills, business skills essentially. So I started doing some research, and I felt like MBA would make more sense, because MBA is what people sort of pursue to switch careers and to sort of figure out, to introspect. And I mean, it might sound like you sort of start your introspection after you get an MBA, but that's absolutely not the case. You need to have some sort of sense where you're heading where you're heading towards, what your sort of goals would be, and then sort of use MBA as your leverage to move forward in that direction. Yeah.
Right.
So that was my thought process. Yeah.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, right? So could you help me understand, as you started thinking about the MBA process, or as you started doing your research about the MBA process, right? What do you believe were your biggest challenges that you would face during this process? Were there any challenges that you thought you would have when you would apply to these schools?
Yeah. So I think that's a good question, because it's such a vast field. Like, we just think of MBA just as a program, but just getting into it involves so many steps, like pre-steps before you can even start applying. Or like, I mean, before even sort of starting my research, I thought, okay, this is just like any master's program probably. And there might be some test. I knew like GMAT is there, and then I'll just have to sort of send in applications, and I'll receive admits or rejections or whatever. But then as I started researching a little bit, I started seeing that, it requires a lot of pre-work, lot of understanding of my own self, what work I've done, how I've added value to the organizations that I've worked at. Then I think the final sort of tip, or the final advice that I took, was from one of my cousins. She had just finished her MBA, and then I sort of reached out to her, I spoke, and then she told me that she had taken help from a consultant. And that's when I sort of, started thinking in that direction that yes, maybe it will make a lot of sense if I get a consultant on board. Because I knowing myself, I mean, I was self-aware about the fact that I would need hand holding, because I felt like I was lost in the ocean, essentially just trying to figure out where to go, which direction, or what sort of steps to take. So just to bring some structure into the entire process, I felt like, yes, I will need help. So that, I guess, the structure was my main sort of challenge to summarize.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Makes a lot of sense. So, when you decided to apply and you started with the application process, what was your overall approach in terms of, figuring out the applications, the essays, and sort of choosing your B schools? Could you tell us a bit about that?
So regarding the applications, I think I started firstly, I knew that I had to take the GMAT. So that was my first step. With GMAT, I started prepping. I bought the official materials. I started going through them, started giving the mock exams and all of that. And then I think I finally, back in April 2022, I gave my attempt, and then I got my score. So I think I was in fact trying back in 2021 as well. Like I had planned that I might apply in 2021 itself for the 2022 intake. So this time, like, and that didn't happen, that didn't work out, because like, whatever work delays and I mean personal whatever situations and all of that came in, and I just couldn't go through with that. So then I wanted to not waste more time on GMAT, because like I got a 710. I started with a goal of at least, like, let's say 750 or 760. That's what I was aiming for initially. But then, having thought of that, I still did not want to waste all my energy just on that, because I knew that the application process is going to be very lengthy. So I started reaching out to consultants, different consultants, and everyone sort of was telling me that you might want to work on your GMAT, and the story was the same. And then I think I guess Piyush was probably he came in towards the end of this conversation phase, and then I really liked Piyush's approach a lot, because I clearly remember, and I think I've mentioned this to Piyush as well, that a lot of the consultants that I spoke to, they were sort of asking me, what schools are you planning to apply to, or what are you targeting? And I had done some research, and I really liked like LBS, HEC, Paris, and some other schools in the US. And they were very discouraging in certain ways. They were like, with this GMAT score, and coming from DU college, which is not as prime as, let's say, SRCC or St. Stephen's, it'll be very difficult. So you might want to sort of lower down, like bring your targets down, like even this is beyond aspirational. And I think that was something that I wasn't very happy to hear, because if your consultant is sort of demotivating in the first call, then I started questioning if it's even worth it. But then I sort of had that call with Piyush, and then I felt very positive after that call, because he sort of broke the situation down into different steps and structures. And then he sort of, that conversation filled me with confidence that yes, things can work out. I need to, go in with a plan and structure my application well. I need to bring out my strengths, what I bring to the table essentially. So I think it was more of a solution oriented discussion rather than the problem oriented discussion, which is what I sort of really enjoyed and liked. And that's when I sort of felt that okay, my sort of search for a consultant is probably like to a close. Overall, I think, again, like I said, it just felt like an ocean of information. Like I would visit a lot of schools, I would see their whatever average GMAT, and I mean, before speaking to consultants and everyone, I used to think, okay, average GMAT, this is what I have to target. But then only after speaking with people, I got to know, okay, no, this is just the average. For Indians, you have to add, let's say, 20 or 30 buffer marks, right?
Right.
So all of that was there. And then I think the next step, best step for me, to just like speak with a consultant and set up a structure how to tackle the situation. Yeah.
Right. Uh, in terms of, now that, you are at the other side of the table and you are going to NUS to start your MBA, If what would you suggest aspirants who are planning to apply this year or next year? What would your biggest advice to them be?
Uh, Start early. Start as early as you can.
Okay.
That would be my first tip. I think back, like I said, back in 2021 when I was initially, planning to apply, and I spoke to my cousin, and I think that was back in July or August, and she told me you're already late, and I was like, but the session doesn't start until next year July, and she's like, you're still late. You need to give your GMAT. You need to figure out your strengths, your story, everything. You need to start drilling down on your essays, your applications, your research. So there's so many steps involved just before you can even sort of shortlist, what schools you're going to apply to and how you're going to apply to those schools, what your story is going to be, what aspects of yourself are you going to bring specifically, because you need to think of how your profile will fit well, or how your strengths will match the needs of the school or the profile of the school, because every school is a little bit different, right? Some schools, if let's say you're going to, let's say, an NCR, which is known for consulting, and maybe not so much for, I don't know, Piyush would be the better person to answer this, but maybe let's say not for a sales role, or something else. But and you're saying that you don't want to do consulting, so then that's not the best fit, right? So you need to
Mhm.
identify those things as well. So I guess just identifying these things, what your profile matches the best with, and what is your best fit essentially, what are your aspirations. So figuring these things out, and well in time, I think those are the few key things that everyone needs to do.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Now, when you started working with, and before we sort of go into this question, maybe very quickly, could you tell us a bit about where did you end up applying? What were your results? And what do you think worked the best or worked most in your favor during these applications?
Again, every school has a different process. Some would have 6 to 7 essays, some would just have 2 essays. So obviously it's different, but then there are certain questions which will always have some overlap, which is like, why do you want to do an MBA? What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? So all these things, and how would you add value to the program? Such things. So just figuring those out was important. Firstly, we finished the ISB application, submitted it, used the work that we'd done on ISB, and then started working on LBS, submitted LBS. That was followed by starting with NUS and HEC again, both in parallel. And then we finished with those two schools as well. I think within a month or two, this was all of these were first round. HEC doesn't really have
Right.
like a second round. It has monthly sort of deadlines, but the rest three, they were all first rounds. So I started getting their responses like within a month or so. Like LBS and HEC did not work out, and it was a surprise to me, and I guess to Piyush as well, probably. At least HEC. LBS was a bit of a long shot, but okay. But yeah, and I think back in probably November is when the first admit came in, and that was ISB. So
Yeah.
that was my first sort of ray of hope that things will be fine. Things are coming my way. And then finally, back in December, when and I still distinctly remember that time that I'd called Piyush. I told him that I'm done with the NUS interview, and they've told me they'll get back to me probably sometime in Jan. And Piyush was like, see, I want to be honest with you. Don't expect too much. They might just waitlist you. I don't want you to get your hopes high. So, so I'd be like, okay, let's prepare. I was trying to prepare myself. And like, I think within the next week, I got an email from them, and I was like,
Right.
it was just surreal. I couldn't believe it. So
Right. Yeah. This I think I would keep this example just to show that admission consultants don't know everything. Right? Because that depends from school to school, that depends from person to person. And again, I think it was a very, very nice surprise. And then you also received some scholarship recently from NUS as well.
Yes, like I hadn't applied for a scholarship when I submitted my NUS application because I guess back then I was like, I just want to make as many applications, like quality applications, but maybe not spending too much time on a lot on one application. So I think the scholarship essay was an optional one, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll just skip it. I'll see. And I wasn't even sure if I'll, my heart was back then still set on maybe an LBS or HEC. But then I then sort of reached out to them and then requested them, whatever, like the interest rates are really high, financing will become really difficult, and just somehow convince them that please let me at least participate in the pool, in the application pool for scholarships. I reached out to Piyush, and even though like things were over, like our application process was like closed shut, he was really it was very sweet of him. There was literally no obligation on his part to help me out, but then he did. He reviewed my sort of scholarship application essay. He made some really good pointers on those. I addressed those comments, I submitted it, and I think it was just yesterday that I received my sort of scholarship award. And it was again, it was surreal. Like I wasn't really expecting it.
I have a very, very quick question here, right? Because you
Yeah.
mentioned that LBS and HEC were your dream schools. And when we discussed, we mentioned that, they could be difficult, but there are certain
Yeah.
ways that we might be able to address.
Yeah.
So what do you feel about those applications now, right?
Right.
Obviously, you got that feedback from a lot of people that LBS and HEC might not be possible with your profile, with your candidature. And we did try for it, but it did not work out,
Yeah.
right? So how do you feel about that now that you've gone through the entire process and it has turned out that LBS and HEC did not work out for us? We did have two very, very nice successes, but we did fail out in terms of what you sort of kind of were dream schools for you.
I think the answer is somewhat simple. Sometimes things just don't work out in life like you want them to. I mean, you can't force your way through life, right? I mean, you can wish for whatever. You can say that my heart is set on a Mercedes Benz class car, and tomorrow, and whatever, let's say today it's 50 lakh rupees. Tomorrow, by the time you get to 50 lakh, they increase it to 80. You can't, I mean, you won't be able to still get it for 50, right? So I mean, just a simple example. But then coming back to the school bit, I think I did have my heart set, yes, on those schools. But as I sort of spoke to Piyush, I realized that it wasn't just me. Like a lot of people who applied to it couldn't really make through to the schools. And like I spoke to a lot of my friends as well. Sometimes it's just the pool of applicants that's really strong, and that's really out of your control. So you have to accept those things along the process, and then I think also just sort of having faith on the process, on your personal profile, on your applications, and then doing whatever you can do the best.
A very quick question to sort of seek some feedback for ourselves, right? Because
Yeah.
uh, if you could if you could help me understand, why did you decide to work with us? I think you've already sort of built up a very nice context regarding that, regarding our call. But ultimately, what led you to work with us? Because we are a very, very new player within the industry.
Yeah.
At the same time, how was that experience of working with us? And how did we help you with your applications, if you could tell us?
Right. Yeah. So I think to your first question, like how did I decide? So I reached out to Piyush again back in, this was late 2021. I told him on the message that I might want to consider like, an investment role post MBA, like it will be a career switch. But I'm not sure because right now I don't have, experience on the investment banking side, or like, on the proper asset market. And I wasn't sure like how to go about it. So Piyush was like upfront, he was straight. He wouldn't be able to sort of provide me with career guidance. What he and his firm does is like help people with their MBA applications and help them building those applications, like working on those applications. So I really liked that straightforward approach, not building any sort of stories, that clear cut approach. That was one aspect out of it. The other was, again, I think I'll go back to the first call that we had. It was like a 1 hour call.
Right.
Supposed to be a 1 hour call. Okay. But it went on for like an hour and a half. And to be honest, I was pretty surprised that, this guy, he's not saying that, okay, I need to go on another call, or, I'm pressed for time. Sorry. That was it. That's your top up of whatever. 4-5K is over now, and we can't talk.
We need a new top up, right?
Yeah, you need to get an additional plan. Your data plan is over. Piyush wasn't that guy, essentially. And I think that's what I want to bring out through various examples, right? Be it my scholarship application that I reached out to him, be it other areas. And definitely, okay, let me give more context to this and more examples.
At least this is very interesting for me to hear, because this is exactly what we teach in the process, right?
Yeah.
Everything that you say, it needs to be substantiated with examples.
Yeah, exactly,
So-
right. There was a time, I think, when I was applying for ISB, and I had told Piyush ki, I need to like whatever, like my office is opening up, they're asking us to come back to Bombay and start working in person, like from office. And I told him that I might not be able to focus a lot for 1 or 2 weeks, but that extended to become like a month or month and a half. And that really sort of derailed our progress. So I remember distinctly that one sort of evening around 8:30, I get a call from Piyush. He went ballistic on me, essentially, ki, what is going on, boss? Are you serious about applying? I don't see any sort of accountability. What is going on? What is happening? At that moment, it did feel like it did pinch me a bit. But then essentially that is what I needed exactly at that moment. I needed that push to sort of ramp up my efforts. In all of whatever was going on in my life, I was sidelining the applications. And I think Piyush told me this very clearly, and I still remember this very distinctly, that life is going to happen. Things will keep on happening. It's not like, you're going to press a pause button on life and you're going to take out chunks of time for your application. That's really not going to happen. It's unrealistic to even expect that. So you just have to find pockets of time here and there, and make do with that. There's no pause button with those things. You just have to fit in the application process with whatever pockets you find. And then that sort of changed the direction of my application. I remember that I finished, I think it was 6 or 7 essays.
I think we finished up 3 applications within 1 month, where we had finished
exactly.
1 application within 2 months previously.
Exactly.
Right.
So I still remember, like, LBS had 5 or 6 essays, if I'm not wrong, and finished all of them over just like 2 days. Over weekend, we finished all of them. I don't know, or I don't, can't think of a situation where someone else would do that. Someone else would sort of call you personally and, ask you ki, why are you not being accountable? And I think that was the essence of working with Piyush for me. He was always there, like your cheerleader on the sidelines, or your mentor, your friend, your coach, everything. I think all in one package, I would say.
That is why we call it a complete application package, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's very kind of you, Rana. I think just to add some perspective to that, the reason why we do that is essentially, all MBA applicants, right? Whoever is applying for top MBA programs, they're all working at great places. They all have their careers going on, right? And that is the main life that they have, right?
Yeah.
And they've chosen, like you, there are all the other people. They've chosen to sort of move up in their careers through a particular program that they want to sort of apply to. But however important this program might be for your career, at the end of the day, the entire application process is a side project, right? Your professional life is continuing. If you have a tight deadline, if you have a client meeting, if you have something coming up, if you're raising funds, if you're have a review meeting with your manager, whatever it might be, that is the main life that you have. That is the main professional life, because that's where you're spending like 10 to 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
And this is just a side project. but the impact of the side project on your future career is going to be huge.
Yeah, definitely.
When candidates work with us, my perspective is essentially that when you are making such a huge investment, not just in terms of finances, obviously you are making a financial investment with
Yeah.
us, but at the same time also in terms of your time, in terms of the effort that you're going to put in towards achieving something which is going to change your career trajectory completely. That accountability factor is very, very important, right?
Yeah.
Let's move on to the final section of the interview, that what we call as the rapid fire. So here we have very short 5-6 questions.
Yeah.
Where we are expecting very, very short, quick answers as well.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first question. Based on your journey and your overall experience, what would you say is the biggest myth about MBA application?
That it's simple and straightforward. It's not.
Okay. That's very interesting to hear. From your perspective, how important is the GMAT or the GRE score when it comes to application evaluation?
I think it's important and I'll give a context to it. So let's say if you've not done very well in your graduate scores or in your undergraduate degree, then definitely you want to have a strong GMAT score to make your applications. Then it also comes down to what schools you're going to apply to and what their average GMAT intake is. If a person has stellar undergrad scores, then I think GMAT is not as important as someone with not as stellar scores. So yeah.
What was the most interesting part of the application?
I think definitely the 8-step process. I think it was nothing short of a session with therapist, honestly. Like we deep dived into my past life, into my childhood, into everything, into probably like my fabric as a human, and churned out, the key messages, the key essence of who I am and what my personality is, captured those into like 250 words, 300 words, and presented it to the schools.
Right. That's very interesting. Thanks again for that. What was the most challenging part of the application process?
Definitely sort of managing it along with work, with whatever, shifting to Mumbai and figuring whatever a flat out or all those things, and still like finding time to work on the applications, doing the research, reaching out to students. I mean, it's a learning in itself, to be honest. I got to learn so much. Like you get to learn about cold emails as well. I mean, you need to reach out to current students or even alumni. So you need to know how to approach them.
Right. One final question, a final piece of advice for future aspirants.
I think choose people who are going to support you in the journey the way you want to be supported. So I think, and I'll give a very quick context to that. I think, like I said, I knew that I needed someone who'll make me accountable or who'll push me to be accountable. And I think with that perspective, Piyush was probably the best fit. So, and having sort of Piyush's support and guidance really made a lot of difference to my entire application process. Like, be it again the scholarship essays, like I mentioned, or just the overall application. I wasn't even planning to apply to ISB initially, but then Piyush was like, you definitely should take an attempt at ISB as well, apart from other schools. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Rana. It was absolutely a pleasure working with you. I wish you the best for your future. I hope you are able to achieve all the goals that you've set out for yourself with the MBA programs. And absolutely, we'll remain in touch in the future as well.